Alright y'all, welcome back to this episode of Loophole Performance. Today what it do is we're going to be changing the oil in this. Now as you search the forums, you're going to see a lot of people complaining about the oil filter location on this car. And for the most part they're not wrong. They're going to complain that it's an incredibly difficult and stupid location and so forth. Which, it's definitely not the easiest oil filter in the world to get to. But it's not terrible either. Today I'm going to show you some tricks and loopholes to get to it. So let's get after it. First step is since this car still has its factory air ride, we need to get in the trunk, disable that, and we'll go from there. Now once you're here in the trunk, you're going to see this air suspension switch. It's hidden behind here. Just flip it off. Now you're going to want to do that because even though the car is off, the air ride system's still going to be trying to compensate for the level of the car up to 90 minutes after it's shut off. And if you get it in the air, it's going to try and vent the front bags, excuse me. So when you drop it back on the ground, you're not going to be able to get your jack out unless it's a super low profile. After that, the air compressor's not going to be terribly happy about lifting the front end back in the air. It'll do it, but it's not happy about it. Also lifting this vehicle, there's a couple tricks that I want to show you about that because you don't lift it where you think you do. Now most of your modern cars, you're going to have a pinch weld like this for a unibody construction, and everybody looks at that and goes, oh yeah, that must be where I'm supposed to lift it. No, as you can see, somebody thought that at one point in time. Instead, a much stronger point is this subframe rail back here. Go up on it, it's much stronger, it's not going to bend and deform. And it'll be a lot safer that way, help keep everything nicer. So once you get under here, you'll find your drain plug right back there. She's a 16mm bolt. And these things only torque to 10 foot-pounds or 120 inch-pounds, so they're not on there terribly tight. Now, one of the things that's going to make your life easier, get yourself a large oil pan. These things do shoot out quite a ways, and it'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to getting that oil filter out. So what you're going to do, just grab your 16mm socket, throw her on the end of there, and she should come loose without too much of a fuss. See, that's all the effort it took, and that's torqued proper, so you don't have to worry about it falling out either. Now, be really careful when you go to tighten these up too. I'm going to mention it again, but it does not take much to strip these. Do go out, do yourself a favor, go get an inch-pound torque wrench, torque it to spec. Please, 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 because you have to drop the motor or pull the motor to do an oil pan on these, and it's not something either of us wants to deal with. Now, something I do that makes my life a little easier so I don't get oil over myself is I'll get an extension, flip my socket on the end of that. It just makes it a lot easier to get everything out without making a mess. So I've got my 6-inch extension on my socket, and then you can see there if I can get my hand out of the way. Got a little bit of oil draining out. And then keep an eye on it. It's a nice dark color, just a good color used oil. I'm not seeing anything sparkly, anything glittery. And then you'll feel her come all the way out. She'll kind of jump at you. And that's how you get all the oil out without getting any on your hand. Now, like I said, these do have a tendency to jump out quite a ways. You can see there that the socket is retained on the end of the bolt. So, no trouble there. And we'll just let her drain. Now, while the oil is draining, that gives us a great chance to get our torque wrench set up. As you can see here, this is in inch-pounds, and she's set dead at 120 inch-pounds. Because 10 foot-pounds multiplied by 12, it gets us 120 inch-pounds. Now, as you can see, she's pretty well reduced to a slow dribble. You can let it go like this for a couple more minutes if you'd like. I do, depending on time. Right now, though, not the most time in the world. It's about 10 degrees out here. It's kind of cold. So we're going to go ahead, put that plug back in her. Now, you need to be especially careful with this plug. Because like I said, they don't take much torque. And it does not take much to strip them. So I've got her in there. Now, a couple other things too. Always start it by hand. You do not want to cross thread this, and unless you're like Hugh Jackman, Brad Pitt, or somebody like that, you don't have enough strength to cross thread that thing by hand. Now another thing too, never put it in without having your wrench in hand. Never ever put it in without having your wrench in hand. My wrench is down here. Put her in there just like so. And that 10 foot-pounds, I can't stress it enough, is not a lot of torque. It is just barely past snug. I'm gonna have to take the extension off of this. Just ever so slightly past snug. Couple of clicky clicks, we're good there. Take a paper towel, clean up this little bit of dripping, and the oil is drained, and we can move on to the oil filter, which is hiding up in there. And it is a bit of a pain, nobody's lying to you about that, but I'll show you the easy way to get her out. Now, the reason why everybody complains about this oil filter is because there's not a whole lot of room for maneuvering for getting it in and out. You'll think that there's enough room to do it right by that sway bar link in between that and that power steering fittings right there, but there's not. You actually have to keep it closer over here in this cavity, and that's how you'll wiggle it away in and out. Now, you're going to want to have your big oil pan, because as you can see, that oil has got to go somewhere, and it's going to drip right onto here, right onto this little member here, and it's going to try and make as much of a mess as it can. That's why there's a bit of oil all the way down along here. There's that cute little divot there that they gave you to try and help maintain it. Most of it's going to come out right underneath this shielding right here for the power steering line. So with that, let's get her broken loose, and once she's off, I will show you the path that I take to get this in and out really quick. What I tell you, as soon as she came loose, that oil was dripping right underneath that shielding. Focus. Focus. There you go. See there, she's off. Whole bunch of oil came out and is caught by the big pan. I just like to let it sit there, let it drain out as much as it's gonna, because I mean, if you take your time on this, it's not a bad job, and it's not a terribly slow job. Even with filming, this oil change has taken me 20 minutes. That's probably all it'll take me. And there's people out there complaining that this takes hours. It really doesn't. It's not that bad. Okay, now this is going to be a little more difficult than I normally like it, due to the nature of filming and doing this one-handed, but it'll still be alright. There we go. You can see now that that's just a nice, good, used oil color. Try to tip her face down to drain as much out of her as you can. Just helps in not making a mess. Take it up here, right like so, kind of by that hose. Oh, like I said, the joys and difficulties of filming one-handed. And she'll slip right down here, right through there, and out. So, now that it's out, let's follow my path again. This big cavity here, right in the crook of that hose right there. That's perfect gap in between here, and then it just sits in this cavity, and you can spin her onto the oil filter housing and cooler housing right there, nice and easy. One more thing too, just while I'm in here, this is your oil pressure sender. This is for your idiot light on the dash. It'll shut off if you got more than 6 pounds of oil pressure, which is just barely enough to keep the dumb thing from seizing. And this boss right here, conveniently, is if you want to tap in your own pressure sensor, which is what I'd recommend doing. I'm going to get a couple paper towels, clean all this up, and I'll show you what to do about getting the new one. Okay, so here in the box we have the new oil filter. It is the FL820S. Pretty well every 4.6 modular motor ever made takes this filter. Now, why would you grab the 820S versus say like a Wix or a Napa Gold or a K&N or God forbid a Fram? Is because that right there, Motorcraft. You always want to buy OE when you can, because they design the dumb thing, they know what the specs are, That Cummins that's sitting over there, it has the motor, or not the Motorcraft, but the Cummins filter in it made by Mopar. And if I can, I get a hold of it. This is like $3 at Walmart. So why not grab it? The wicks is like 10. There's some controversy out there as to whether or not the wicks constitute the cost, but if you were to take it to the dealership, they'd put the same exact filter in it, and we're using a better quality oil, so I reckon we're getting better than dealership quality as far as oil life and oil quality and oil filtering. Something else that needs to be noted is this gasket here. Never, 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 never put it in dry. You always want to take a little bit of oil and lube it up. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to get this filter or the gasket off. When it comes time to change it, they'll just fuse themselves right together. Now, there's a lot of nevers with an oil change. You hear me going that it doesn't take much torque to strip that drain plug. I'm absolutely correct. Don't strip it, please. Just get yourself an inch-pound torque wrench. Oil changes and torque wrenches are cheap. Pulling the motor to do an oil pan is very costly, very time-consuming. It's best just to avoid it in the process. Now, this filter also features an anti-drain back valve, meaning that the oil stays in the filter. It doesn't get drained back into the oil pan. This is going to help it so it doesn't knock on startup, because the engine's not starved for oil. Now, there's also another debate of, do you pre-fill the oil filter when it goes in? I'm of the method, pre-fill it if you can, if it doesn't make too much of a mess. Because, now the argument against that is then you're running unfiltered oil through your engine, which, how dirty is your engine bay that that's a problem? In some spots, yeah, I can totally see that being an issue. But with these, I always lube the gasket and then I put it in. It's the first place that oil goes right off the pump is to the oil filter. She'll only be without oil pressure for a second or two. If you only do this every oil change, it's not going to cause too much damage, not going to cause too much wear on your engine. Got a Honda Accord that I did this for every time, and it lasted 600,000 miles till the head gasket blew. So I'm not terribly worried about her not seeing oil pressure for a second. All the oil that's still in the cam journals, the rod bearings, everything else is going to protect her till she can build that pressure for that second. Okay, so I'm going to apologize up front for the shakiness of this shot. As you can see, I've got my thin layer of film on the gasket. Let's go ahead and let's get her up into her home. So, same way we took her out, we're taking her straight up, rotating just a touch, taking it back, taking it up again, and around, and we're back in there, just kind of chilling. Okay, as you can see, there's only a little bit of grime on the outside of the housing, nothing in there. One more time, just so y'all know where I'm going. I'm gonna go in through here, around, angle this way, back this way, tilt her up, and she's gonna fall right back into here. Now, rotate her so that she's facing the right direction. Find out where your bung is on your filter housing. Here, I don't know I wouldn't call that a bung on second thought. And then just gently screw her in. Now, like I said, I apologize. I'm trying to do this one-handed. I'm still trying to give y'all a good view. Oh, goodness gracious. There we go. There she started. And then just kind of spin her on down. Now, another thing too, with these, do not tighten it up as tight as you can go. You just want to go snug. Why? Because she's going to tighten herself up a little bit too as you drive it. So if you get her on as tight as you can go, and then it's tightening itself up even more, it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult to get that out. Now, you can get a long screwdriver in here and try to punch it out going and spinning that way. You can do it. I've had to do it. but it's something I would just as soon avoid. So there she's in there nice and tight, and that's the hardest part of this whole thing done. Next up is we just need to fill her, and we'll be on our way. Alright, now that we've got the old oil drained and the new filter on, it's time to put some fresh oil in it. Apparently this one's a little excited. Now, what I run in mine is 5W30 Mobil 1 full synthetic. Now, you'll be doing some research and find out on the forums that, yeah, I want to say in 01, Ford came out with a TSB saying that everything that came with 5W30 in it, 99 and prior, is now updated to be run 5W20. Now, there's some speculation on that as far as whether or not they wanted to meet CAFE regulations, whether that actually is better for it. I'm not here to answer that question in particular. All I know is, if you look in the owner's manual, it tells you this came with 5W30. That's what's going back in it. So, it's getting the best synthetic, in my opinion, that I've had really good luck with, is Mobil 1 5W30. Now, I have an 04 Mercury Grand Marquis with the 4.6. It's a 2-valve versus a 4-valve. It calls for 5W20. It says it right on the oil cap. It also gets Mobil 1. Now, I'm not sponsored by Mobil 1. I don't have enough subscribers for a sponsorship. I pay for all this, and from my research and from my results from when I took the valve covers off to do the timing set on that Mercury, everything was extremely clean. I'll try to put some pictures in there from what I saw, but extremely clean. After I'd done the first couple oil changes with Mobil 1, and everything looked basically brand new. So that's what's going back in it. That's what I'm going to run. If eventually I get enough subscribers, yeah, I wouldn't mind an oil sponsorship. But here's the thing. This stuff also claims that it's good for 10,000 miles guaranteed. That might be true. I'm not here to dispute that. But what I do know is oil is cheap. Rebuilds are costly. I try to do 75% of what the filter minder says, or the oil minder, excuse me. It's a little thing on the dash that says oil change in such time. Okay, I try to change it at 5,000 miles or whenever it says 25% life remaining, whichever comes first. This one I'm a little late on. It's got 500 or 5,500 miles on her on this oil change, and it's got 12% left. So yeah, I was a little late on this. Had some late nights at work, but I definitely don't let it hit zero. Because oil is cheap, rebuilds are costly. So let's go ahead, let's get the funnel, and let's get this in it. Now, with these 4.6s, I believe the exact service fill is like 6.01 quarts. I'm just going to throw 6 quarts in her. Even right here on the fender well, 5W30. Okay, so got the oil cap off, got the funnel, and let's go ahead and throw our 6 quarts of 5W30 in her. Oh, this one's coming off a little rough. I really ought to invest in a tripod. There we are. And then just slowly pour it on in. That is very good looking oil, at least compared to what came out. Now, what came out was kind of like a blood red. Not quite ATF looking, but definitely not gold. And then I always hang on to the old bottles just to make recycling easy, because why not? We take it for free. Do our part. There's even some companies out there that are taking the old oil, recycling it, and making it into new motor oil. I haven't done enough research on that to know if that's worth running in my personal vehicles, but if that's cool, if they can actually do that, that's really cool. And in she goes. Don't get too ahead of yourself that you make a mess. Because right below these is the exhaust manifolds, and yeah, hot oil, or hot exhaust manifold and oil seems like a really good way to catch your car on fire. Now she's a little thicker falling right now. Like I said, it's about 10 degrees outside. So a little closer to maple syrup. And then let that sit for a second. And then we can take and put the cap back on, and then we'll hop in, start it, verify that the idiot light goes off, come out and check underneath for leaks, get her on the ground, and we'll be good to go. No abnormal sounds other than a little bit of an exhaust guide tick. Let's have a look underneath. Let's grab a light so we can see what we're looking at. No leaks. That's a job well done. Now there's one final step needed to reset her once we're done. Oh my goodness. Please close door. At least it's very polite about it. Go into your vehicle settings. Oil change reset. Now if yours has a second, this is for the second gen. Push and hold that reset button, and it'll reset your oil life. I also keep trip B for the oil life, so that way I can keep track of it that way too. If you have a first gen, your button for that's going to be right about here. Now if you like the content that you saw today, I hope this helps you out. Please consider subscribing. I've got some great big plans for these cars. In this Lincoln, she's going to be getting new C heads. She's going to be getting an 01 Cobra intake, a 373 limited slip rear end. So we've got some big plans for her. We're also going to be J-Mod the transmission. And my wife's 04 Grand Marquis, it's getting an 355 LSD out of a police interceptor. We're going to be dropping the tank and changing some evap sensors in this Cummins. Eventually we're going to be twin turboing it. It's one of these days I'm probably going to buy a 6.4 Ford and pull the 12 valve out of this truck and put it in that 6.4 Ford. So lots of great automotive adventures to come as I do just simple maintenance, other repairs, and other things to these cars. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. I'll try to answer everybody that I can. And yeah, please follow me on this adventure as we get this Lincoln back to showroom and a lot peppier in stock, as we turn this into the ultimate tow pig, and as we turn my wife's daily driver into one fantastic sleeper. Thanks to everybody that's watched this so far, and everybody that's on the forums that's giving me a hand. Thanks, and have a great night.